I'm Kirsten and welcome back to our channel. So today I am going to be doing a sit down video, but it is not going to be a true crime video. I did already previously record this video, but it's just not to my standards. So I'm going to just re-record it and hopefully it will go better. And if not, you'll never see this video. So today we are going to be talking about everyday items that you may have in your house that was created or invented for the military or by the military or even by people that were in the military. In honor of Veterans Day, I thought this would be just fun, and while doing research I found these very, very interesting. So let's just jump right into this. So the first item we're going to be talking about is some super glue. Super glue was invented back in 1942 by a chemist named Harry Coover. During World War II, he wanted to create a clear plastic material to create something with to help precision for gun sights on the military guns and stuff, but it ended up really failing because the material that he was using was very sticky, which just wasn't gonna work. So in 1951 he found the material to be more of an adhesive, and by 1958 he began to market it as Eastman 910, and it is later known as today called super glue. Super glue was used in the Vietnam War to help stop bleeding and seal up wounds. The next thing we're going to be talking about is duct tape. I have pink, but plain duct tape is probably what this was invented. An adhesive tape, it was invented by Vesta Stout. And in 1943, while she was packing up her son's boxes because they were both in the military, she noticed that it wasn't super easy to seal up the boxes as they used paper tape that they dipped in wax to make it stick. She did find that the paper tape was really hard to open. So she ended up finding a waterproof cloth tape that would seal and become much sturdier than what they were doing. So she ended up writing a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who was super impressed by her thought, that he ended up forwarding the idea to the War Production Board, and that's how they ended up creating duct tape as we know today. Is the Kleenexes. My box is pretty much empty and really, really broken, but we're gonna move on from that. But in 1924, Kimberly Clark again produced a product making thin and soft tissues called Kleenex. They initially sold them as makeup remover tissues, but they noticed that customers were using them to blow their nose, so they did switch the gear and started to advertise it as a way of blowing your nose, as a disposable version of a handkerchief. Next invention is a microwave oven. So in 1945, Percy Spencer noticed that a radar vacuum tube melted his chocolate bar that was in his pocket. So because he was really interested by that, he ended up pointing the radar to at other foods and found that they ended up getting hot very quickly. So he then discovered that microwave radiation was responsible for heating them up. So he ended up patenting the technology and developed the first microwave oven, which weighed 750 pounds and was almost 6 feet tall. First countertop microwave wasn't created or manufactured until 1965. So now moving on to the next invention, which is in this case. This is where we keep ours. but an electric razor. I'm just gonna put it this way because it's covered in hair and it's gross, but an electric razor for shaving. So it wasn't really designed for the military specifically, but it was created by a military man named Colonel Jacob Schick in the 1910s. While looking for gold in Alaska and British Columbia, he ended up injuring himself, and while he was recovering, he had a very difficult time shaving. So he created kind of like a rough draft, but when he did try to get a patent for it, it got rejected. So he ended up putting it on hold while he ended up being reported for military duty for World War I. And on May 13th of 1930, he ended up updating his draft and received an official patent for it. And during the first decade of production, it was not very popular at all. But in the late 1940s, it exploded in popularity, and he ended up selling his invention to Norelco. So the next item is Silly Putty. I don't have any, but I remember playing with this as a child. In 1943, in an attempt to create synthetic rubber due to a rubber shortage during World War II, James Wright discovered an extremely stretchy yet bouncy goop of goo. Not particular for the military. This wasn't meant for military purposes, but he was looking for different ways to use it. And in 1949, he sent out a sample to a toy store owner named Ruth Allgatter. I'm probably butchering that, but she ended up packaging up the goo and calling it Bouncy Putty. It was packaged by a man named Peter Hodgson, and when him started to sell their own toys, they renamed it Silly Putty, and it is still known as Silly Putty today. These are more along the medical line. You do not have these in your home, but I thought these medical things were so interesting. Okay, so the first thing some people may or may not have, I own one, but an EpiPen. So there is a life-saving tool that will administer a quick shot into the outer thigh that you push down on, and it puts a needle into their skin, and it gives them a dose of epinephrine. It is used for severe allergic reactions. It's to help prevent you from going into anaphylactic shock. It was first developed in the Cold War era. It was to give soldiers a way of self-injecting them with an antidote that would cancel out or whatever nerve gas. And in the 1970s, Sheldon Kaplan realized that this would be a good way of delivering epinephrine and preventing anaphylactic shock, as that can happen really quickly. So that's how the EpiPen was created. So another medical thing. So these last three things are typically things that only doctor offices, hospitals have. And the next one is a flu vaccine. So in 1918 and 1919, there was a influenza pandemic happening, and it affected a lot of the soldiers for World War I. And so that kind of motivated the US military to really develop the first flu vaccine. US ended up approving the first vaccine to be for military use in 1945, but it wasn't approved for civilians until 1946. So the flu shot was initially for the military and is now for everybody. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is penicillin. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin in 1928, but it wasn't until World War II that the US started to mass produce it as a medical treatment that we have today. So it became a very major priority for the US War Department to manufacture penicillin for soldiers. They called it a race against death. Military surgeons were amazed at how the drug would reduce pain, increase the chances of survival. It made it easier for nurses and doctors to care for soldiers in the battlefield. US considered it as a critical part of the war effort. To prepare for D-Day, the country ended up producing 2.3 million doses for allies and troops. And after the war, civilians gained access to the drug like we have today. And the last thing we're going to be talking about is blood plasma transfusions. So during World War II, U.S. surgeon named Charles Drew standardized the production of blood plasma for medical use. They would send 2 sterile jars, one full of water and one full of freeze-dried blood, and they would mix them together and then they would transfuse them into somebody's body. They did this because plasma could be put into anybody, doesn't matter what blood, it would be used for anybody and everybody. You didn't have to have a specifics, and it made it very easy to administer in battlefield. Inventions that were invented for the military or by the military. So yeah, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment down below, happy Veterans Day, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the bell notifications so you're notified when we post every single Friday and Tuesday. This is KMCers, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.